So I was driving Christmas night down to Canberra to see my family, and I played some Christmas carols to start with. I was sort of in the Christmas kind of mood, and then I decided I'd had enough Christmas carols, and so I put on a podcast, and it's from it's a podcast that I listen to a reasonable amount. It's a show called Unbelievable, which normally brings an atheist and a theist, usually a Christian of some sort, together for a dialogue. This time, the one that I listened to was a little bit different. There were three people. So one was a well-known Christian, not a Catholic, but a well-known Christian apologist. Another one was a guy called Jordan Peterson, whom some of you will know, a clinical psychologist who's become quite famous and maybe even slightly notorious for some of his thoughts and ideas, particularly around the psychology of religion. And then the third was a lady, her name is Dr. Rachel Neuberger Goldstein, and she's a philosopher, and she's won a bunch of awards for her writings, but one of them is called Plato at the Googleplex. So if you're philosophically minded, that's all about the relevance of Plato for today. I didn't find myself agreeing with Dr. Neuberger Goldstein very often during the course of it. She's a self-described, what she would call a naturalist, and by that what she means is that she thinks that all of our world, and particularly, and this is the question of the podcast, what can we live a meaningful life, and what does it mean to live a meaningful life? All of that can be explained with reference just simply to this world, to as it were, this nature, our human nature, this natural world. We don't need recourse, according to her, to God. And what becomes clearer in the course of the podcast is that she was raised a very conservative Jew in the United States, and over a difficult time, and I think a process of some time, she abandons the faith of her family and childhood in favour of what she calls naturalism. So, as I said, there was much in there. It's interesting dialogue. There's much in there that I found myself thinking, I'd love to sort of talk to you about that. I found myself frustrated with some of the things she was saying. But I was also frustrated with both Dr. Peterson and the apologist, because I felt that both of them, their response to her was to kind of insist upon the need for a transcendent God, which that might sound surprising that I would be a bit frustrated by that. Of course I believe that, right? Of course I believe that. But I also felt that what she was rejecting, one of the things that she was suspicious about, was the power of religious faith to manipulate or coerce people. And that's not a crazy fear. You can point to different periods in history, groups within history, where religion has been manipulated in that way. But to take the worst examples of religion and then say all religion's bad is a classic case of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? So, but she's suspicious. And the other thing that I found myself saying was she said, look, to have a meaningful life, to find value and significance and mystery, I don't need God. There's enough here in the human being, in myself and in the world. I don't need to look beyond. And the response of both of these authors, Peterson wouldn't describe himself as a Christian, but obviously the apologist certainly would. Both of them were to sort of say, really in some way or another, that real meaning and significance must be grounded in God. And I believe that. But part of meeting her need and responding to her objections wasn't just simply to assert, I think, a transcendent God who probably fits into the picture for her of a God that she's rejected, but to actually say, for us as Christians, we have a God who's revealed himself in Christmas, God who has revealed himself in this little baby, God who has become one of us in Jesus of Nazareth, and that means that this world's significance, its meaning, its mystery, is ultimately grounded by a God who has become one of us, but that actually fills this world with meaning as well. And the line that was running through my head comes from the Second Vatican Council, where in Gaudium et Spes, which is the document on the church and the world, it says that God does not, in the incarnation, in the story of Jesus of Nazareth, God does not simply reveal God to us, but God also reveals what it is to be human to us. That if we want to know what it's like to be truly human, if we want to go into the depths of the mystery of being human, if we want to find the richest and deepest meaning in human existence, we're to look to Jesus for that too. Yes, we're to look to Jesus as the revelation of God, as the Son of God made flesh, the Word of God incarnate amongst us. But the feast day we celebrate today, the Feast of the Epiphany, which means revelation, is not just, it is first and foremost the revelation that in this little baby, in this unique human individual, and I'm completely aware of how outlandish and strange a claim this is, that in one person, God is fully revealed to us. That's the significance of this feast day. But at the same time and in the same breath, and especially when we're talking and wanting to connect with those amongst us who are like Dr. Neuberger Goldstein, who only think this world has significance and are trying to find mystery and meaning and purpose within it, we can say, you know what? The mystery, the dignity, the grandeur, the drama, the misery, the beauty of being human is also found in Jesus of Nazareth. Look at the compelling figure of this little baby who grows up, and look at the sublime nature of his teaching. Look at the things that he does, all the way to giving his life on the cross. And you see in all of that the deepest ground, the deepest meaning, the deepest source of what it is to be human. So, as I said, I was kind of thinking I'd love to have been on the podcast for that, but of course I'm just here. So what I want to do just to finish off the homily is to tie that in, the significance of being human, and that Christianity takes us right into the depths of that. You don't abandon being human when you make a decision to follow Christ. You enter more deeply into the mystery of being human. What I wanted to do in that is to also recognise that it's the New Year's weekend, right? So yesterday was New Year's Day. I don't know if you believe in New Year's resolutions. I don't know if you've done any. One of the MGL sisters posted on Instagram yesterday that she's decided to do New Year's resolutions backwards. So she looks back over 2020 now, and she writes down all the things that she did, and then says, they were my New Year's resolutions. I thought that was funny, and it's a good way of celebrating what she'd accomplished over the course of the year, including her final vows. But I also think it's kind of missing the point of a New Year's resolution, because the New Year's resolution, of course, is saying, I want to change and grow, I want to do something differently this year. And I think for us as Christians, that's worthwhile. Whether you tie it to a New Year's resolution or not doesn't matter so much as the desire to say, you know what, it's important that I change, that it's really important that I grow, that as Christians we're not static individuals, but that we want to grow and deepen and develop. In a year like this, it's pretty hard to make big New Year's resolutions. There's so much uncertainty, right, going on. And there might be a very obvious resolution you want to make. But if you're scratching around, you're thinking, I don't even know what to resolve to do, here are 3 thoughts from the saints that I thought might be helpful. And again, each of these, I think, in their own way, deepen us in the mystery of being human. They take us more deeply into the mystery of being a human being. So here's the first one. A word or a smile is often enough to put fresh life in a despondent soul. A word or a smile is often enough to put fresh life in a despondent soul. So that's from St Therese of Lisieux, and I guess the resolution there is smile, especially when you see a sad face in front of you. The second one is conquering the tongue is better than fasting on bread and water. Conquering the tongue is better than fasting on bread and water. So I guess the resolution there would be, if I'm able to gain mastery of what I say so that it's words of life and light and love and peace, then that's better than any kind of self-asceticism that I might engage in. And if you guess, that's from John of the Cross, top of the class. It's just like him to say, very austere guy, fasted heaps. but he's saying that it's getting control of what we say might be more important. And then the last one, very simply, is love much. Love much. And that's from Teresa of Avila. So if you're looking around for some New Year's resolutions, can I give you and invite you to consider the words of these three saints?